Okay, welcome to the Strong Youth Podcast. Today we have as our guest Dr. Bobby Lowe. He is a sports psychologist here at Brigham Young University, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt. My name is Dr. Bobby Lowe. I work here in the athletic department. My job on a day-to-day basis is to train and teach the athletes and the teams here how to think while they compete, while they train, while they perform. And so spend a lot of time working one-on-one with players and doing team trainings with players on all of the mental strengths and mental skills to help them unlock their best performance. So yeah, really enjoy it. Been here for about a year, came from some other universities before this. And so yeah, having a ton of fun.
Awesome. Well, to kick things off, you talk about mental skills. How do you define mental skills or mental performance? What does that mean?
Yeah, mental performance really is just similar to physical performance, right? If you are demonstrating a set of physical skills, right, we'd call that physical performance. Mental performance really is just the demonstration of a set of mental skills or mental strengths that help you perform your best. It unlocks your physical skills. Another way to kind of define it is the mental toughness, right? What is mental toughness? Well, it's a series of skills. Mental toughness is a series of skills or abilities that a player or an individual can learn and then apply and help them perform better. And in any domain, really, we just sort of take all of that psychology, all of that research, all of that neuroscience and apply it to sport. But it can be applied in any kind of performance domain. So you think about the performing arts. It can be applied in business. It can be applied in as a parent, as a community member, right? So really, any domain is useful for the application of these mental strengths or mental skills.
Mm-hmm. What do you see as the most important mental skills for athletes to have, or maybe for the young athletes to develop at a younger age?
I have my own personal favorites, right? But really, from a lot of our research and a lot of our studies, there's really 8 kind of mental skills, mental strengths, and think about them in terms of a category of skills, right? So confidence is a mental strength, but there are several things that build confidence or several skills that a player can do to build their confidence. And they really work together, right? Like you can't have one mental skill and then that's going to unlock all of your performance, right? It will help, but you really got to develop all 8 of these. And the last one being really efficient decision-making. And once you've developed all 8 of them and then you use them on the field or on the track or on the court, they kind of work almost in concert with each other. And they lead to a player's best performance, right? It unlocks all of your physical abilities. It unlocks your decision-making, your problem-solving, and allows you to perform your best. And some players would describe their best performance by saying things like, "Oh, I was in the zone," or "I felt unconscious," and in the psychology world we call that state flow. But it's really the combination of all of those skills working together, leading to great decision making, which then leads to great performance, right? So I could rank them. Like my personal favorite actually is the skill of confidence and then the skill of self-belief. And so a lot of times when we work with players, like we'll teach that first skill, those first 2 to kind of get them going. But really probably the most important is how efficient or how effective is your decision-making when you're on the court or on the field or on the track, right?
Yeah, for sure. So I used to play basketball.
Yeah.
And I totally know what you're talking about when you say you get in the zone and one day you just have a fantastic game, you're super confident. When I first started playing, that wasn't the case. And I think I always entered that zone unintentionally. So how would one train confidence? How do you train yourself to maybe be in that state more often?
Yeah. So big question there. And I could give you kind of a short, quick answer, right? But it would be fair to sort of set up a couple of pieces to help that, right? So before we ever get into teaching and training mental skills with a player, a lot of times we'll start with the neuroscience. We'll start with what we understand about the brain, how the brain works, everything we know about how the brain is plastic and it can reorganize itself and it can be programmed essentially, right? And the way we program that, or the way we, I like to call it wiring intelligence. So you think about the brain as sort of a giant electrical grid, right? And as we build physical habits like shooting or rebounding, the brain will wire in habits, pathways, patterns, right? We call them neural pathways, right? And the same thing happens when we build our mental skills. So as we start to practice the skills of confidence or focus or motivation, we start to wire in those habits, right? And so the first thing we'll share or teach players is hey, your brain is plastic. It can change. It can reorganize itself. You can learn all these different skills and abilities, right? You can control that. They're not random, and they're not uncontrollable, right? So we'll start a lot of times with the neuroscience, and then we'll move into really the best way you build any of the mental skills starts with how you talk to yourself, right? So we program our mind by using the words and by using our phrases and communicating to ourselves, right? So sometimes you'll hear people in our field talk about that as like, that's your inner voice, or they'll talk about that, they'll say that's your self-talk. But we spend a lot of time teaching players, quite frankly, just how to talk to themselves, right? What do you say in your mind, right? And it's that skill in a combination of a couple of others, but then it's that skill that then leads to, okay, here's how we build confidence. It's the type of words you use. It's the type of phrases you use that come from different places, right? So let's use confidence as an example. If I said to you, Matt, are you a good basketball player? The right answer is yes, I'm a good basketball player, right? Of course. And I would say, well, how do you know you are a great basketball player?
I'd look at my skills and my practices, look at my shooting ability and my ability to take the ball off the bounce, my dribbling, and I'd look at my past experience.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So you went right to where I was hoping you'd go, and that is I look at my previous experiences, developing skills, developing habits, and then you probably would add to that, I've won these games and I've scored this many points and I've had this many rebounds. And so really, if I said, how do you know you're a great basketball player? You'd say, well, there's evidence. There's previous evidence. There's a history of successful experience. So that's the number one way we build our confidence, is by reviewing those previous successful experiences and then saying to ourselves, like, hey, I am a great basketball player. And here's how I know, right? I've won these games. I've won those championships. I've scored this many points. I've competed against these other players, and I fared pretty well, right? Unfortunately, a lot of players will look at previous failures or mistakes, and that's the piece that they end up reviewing and reflecting on a lot, which actually leads them to have lack of confidence or even self-doubt, right? I could probably say to you, I could probably ask you, Matt, tell me about like your best game, and you could illustrate something like, I scored 30 points and had 10 rebounds and 15 assists, and it was an amazing game, but I missed the last second shot and we lost the game. And if I asked you, what are you remembering the most about that game? Most athletes don't remember the 30, 10, and 15. They remember I missed the last shot, and we lost the game, right? So even though it was an amazing, great performance, we fixate too much on what went wrong or what didn't go well or what mistakes or failures or errors I made, right? And then that leads to lack of confidence or ruminating, which leads to self-doubt, right? Mm-hmm. Which all develops what we call negative thinking patterns. I like to call that reactive intelligence, right? So we're building negative thinking patterns. If we focus on previous successful experience and remind ourselves, oh, I had 30, 10, and 15, it actually was a really great game, and here's what I did well, then we're wiring in the proactive intelligence, right? We're wiring in the correct patterns to think. And that piece is going to help you build your confidence, right? You're going to be more confident going into the next game, remembering and reflecting on what went well and what you did well versus, oh, I missed the last second shot and we lost the game. Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
So that's one way we build our confidence. Another way, what I'll add to that is really the best way to build your confidence is how you talk to yourself. And this is why we're constantly training players and teams how to use their inner voice, how to use their self-talk to build these skills. I'll add two more pieces to the confidence skill. Another way to build confidence is to model the great athletes, right? So since we're talking about basketball, one of the best examples of modeling is actually Kobe Bryant, right? And it was funny because in an interview, if you've watched the interview with Michael Jordan, The Last Dance, right, and they go through that documentary, he says in that documentary there was only one person that probably could have beat him in one-on-one, and that person was Kobe Bryant. He said Kobe probably was the only person that could beat me in one-on-one because he stole all of my moves. And sometimes if you watch silhouettes of Michael Jordan shooting a fadeaway and Kobe Bryant shooting a fadeaway, it's kind of hard to tell the difference, right, of who's who. But that's because Kobe really was very intentional about modeling and copying Michael Jordan's moves, right? So as we model other great athletes and develop their skills, develop the similar abilities, develop or even model their mental toughness, their mental skills, that's another way we can build our own personal confidence. And then the last piece I'll add to this is really it's a combination of doing all of the work, doing all of the training, and then trusting that you've done all of the work, right? And then when you walk out onto the court, you can say to yourself, well, yeah, I've done everything to put myself in the very best position to play my best right now. Like I've trained, I physically am in the best shape of my life. I've done all the reps. Therefore, I can walk out onto the court and believe, and be really confident because I've done all that work. So there's kind of 4 skills that then build the mental strength of confidence, right? But the primary piece there is in all of those things, right? How are you talking to yourself? Are you saying to yourself, hey, I've done all the work. I've trusted. Now I'm just going to go and perform. Or are you saying to yourself, oh, man, I haven't done all the work. Maybe I should have done a little bit more. Maybe I can't play very good because I haven't done all the work, right? One of those is self-belief and confidence, and the other is self-doubt and lack of trust, right?
So you'd say one of the main things about leaving everything at practice you do develop skills, but it's also a great boost in a game to know I did give everything, so it gives more confidence. Would you say that's a greater benefit, or would it really depend on the situation?
Yeah, well, yeah. So we in the brain, so going back to the neuroscience, right? We're always building habits. Whether you're intentionally building habits by doing skill work or training your footwork or your ball handling or your shooting drills, right? You're developing physical habits. We call that muscle memory, right? It gets stored in the subconscious. And then as you're doing that, you're also building mental habits too. Now, if every time you shoot the ball and you make it or miss and you say something like, man, I stink at shooting, you're wiring in a mental habit with that pattern, right? Every time you miss and you're like, oh, dang, I stink. I can't make any of these shots, right? You're wiring in the mental habit, right? So we want to get really good in those, as we're doing the physical reps, we want to get really good also adding in the mental reps, right? By saying the right things after a shot. So you shoot it, whether you make it or miss it, you should be thinking, I got this. Next one's going in, right? Or I'm on fire, or everything, we got to be talking to ourselves that way, right? Hyping ourselves up, building ourselves up. Even more specifically, we work with players and we'll tell them to focus on a specific cue, right? So when you shoot, what are you thinking? Are you thinking balance? Are you thinking, have a good follow through? Or are you just thinking like see the rim, right? So we work on specific tasks to help people perform their skills when they're shooting. And when we do that, so the conscious part of the brain can really only hold one thought at a time. So when we fill and occupy that space with one thought, it blocks out all of the distracting thoughts, right? And a distracting thought in that scenario could be, well, I've missed my previous 3 shots, therefore I'm cold, right? Players say that all the time, right?
Yep.
Instead, they're thinking, no, I got this. Next one's going in, right? And then they focus on their shooting cue, right? So going back to your question, we want to build the physical habits when we're training and the mental habits when we're training. And the combination of the two is the piece that then when you go into a game or a competition, you're more confident, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Where would one find the balance between thoughts, negative thoughts that say, oh, shoot, I missed it, I'm no good at shooting, but also I'm not performing the best I want to because I want to improve, looking for things to improve? Is there a difference in those thoughts, and where would one find the balance, making sure we're not thinking negative, but we're still trying to improve and not just hyping ourselves up when we're actually not hitting our goals?
Yeah, words matter. Words matter, and the more precise and exact, and the more specific you are with your words, the better programming or the better wiring you're going to have in the brain, right? So one of the things we do when we train players is to focus really on the proactive language, right? Which is so in sports psychology, you kind of have 2 approaches. There's an approach-oriented type of language, and then there's an avoidance-oriented type of language. Sometimes we hear that playing to win, I'm approaching something, or playing not to lose. I'm avoiding, not wanting to lose, right? One of those is a kind of reactive type of thinking pattern. The other is a proactive thinking pattern, right? So we always encourage and train players to be really specific and be precise and exact in using proactive language when they're playing. And I love the word proactive. It means to create or to control a situation. So when you're thinking about playing a game or playing basketball, and let's say there's 2 seconds left on the clock, and you have to step up to the foul line and hit 2 shots to win the game, right? Do you want to create or control that moment with your language or with your words, or do you want to react and let the moment control you, right? So what's really more important, not is the balance between a negative thought and a positive thought. It's really how good can you get at programming and wiring in the correct proactive types of thoughts, right? Now, that being said, the negative thoughts always get in there. The distracting thoughts always get in there. So we never tell a player don't think those things, because they always get in there, right? You miss a couple of shots and you really do. You think, oh, dang, this is not good, right? But then in that moment, one of the key mental skills is how well do you bounce back, right? How well do you reset and refocus back onto the proactive language, right? So a better way to ask the question isn't so much like, is there a balance between the two? It's when this happens, when the negative thought gets in there, let's reset and just try to be as proactive as we can in all of our words and our language while we're training and competing, right?
Okay. What role do parents and coaches have in helping young athletes
massive
develop?
roles, right? I mean, I work a lot with individual players and teams, right? And one of the essence of a high-performing athlete comes from a couple of places. They got to have potential, right? They got to put in all the training. That's the physical and the mental training. And then they got to be really good at removing the interference, right? So removing out anything that might be distracting or might interfere with their performance, right? So I spent a lot of time on that piece. And believe it or not, sometimes coaches and sometimes parents can be the distraction. They can be the source of interference. And so with a lot of players, it doesn't happen a lot, but with a lot of players that may say, hey, like my parents are kind of the distraction, right? We'll work on, okay, here's what you can control. Here's how you need to sort of use your words and use your language to kind of remove and block out that type of interference, right? Now, that being said, parents and coaches actually play a massive role in influencing whether or not a player will be a high-performing player, right? And sometimes going back to sometimes the words that they interject, right? If you're going out to shoot those last 2 free throws and a parent or a coach says to you, Matt, don't miss these free throws or else we lose the game.
I hated
and
that.
Everybody's going to run ladders until their legs fall off, right? Well, what have I done in that exact moment? I've now introduced forms of interference, because now you might be going up to the line thinking more about, oh crap, I don't want to have to go run ladders, or I don't want to lose this game, or I don't want to miss these shots, or I don't want to let my team down, right? And if, again, going back to the neuroscience, if you're thinking that and your brain can only hold one thought, what are you not thinking about? Well, stepping up there and confidently knocking down those 2 shots, right? Making it, exactly what you said, right? So I call that thought planting, right? If you've seen the movie, what's that movie? Inception, where they go into their dreams and they can like plant a thought, right? Parents and coaches play a massive role in planting the correct thoughts in a player's mind. So what I will often tell parents or coaches is give them the task, build their confidence, and then give them the specific task, right? So if I'm a coach and you're walking up to the line, to knock down those 2 shots, I'm saying to you, Matt, you got this. This is easy. Just follow through, or whatever your specific cue is for making free throws, right? Which might be, see the rim, give a good push, follow through, right? But I want to help direct your attention just as much as you need to develop the skills to direct your own attention, right? So as a coach or a parent, we work with coaches and parents to say this, don't say that.
Right. I've also heard that the brain doesn't really understand negative terms like no or don't.
Yeah.
So if you say don't miss, your brain only thinks about missing.
Yeah,
it can't process that.
The brain is very objective, right? So it hears the instruction or the object of a sentence rather than the do or the don't, right? Rather than the do or the don't. So we work a lot with players and teams and even coaches to say, like, again, your words matter a lot. Don't tell the player, and I just did the same thing, right? You don't want to say to a player, don't miss this shot, right? You want to give them the task, give them the specific instruction, right? And which would be like, hey, go knock these down. You got this, right? But that's because the brain doesn't really understand. The brain doesn't love vagueness either, right? So if I say to you, like, Matt, just go be positive, just go think positive, you may be going, awesome, great, I'll go think positive, but then your brain starts to ask questions. It starts to think, what's positive? What does that mean, right? And so the brain loves details and specificity, right? So if I said go think positive, really what I mean is go be proactive and focus on and say your specific cues or your specific tasks that help you play great. So if you're a defender, that could be as simple as saying, like, move your feet. But are you saying to yourself in your own mind, move my feet, or are you saying don't get beat, right? And so again, the words matter. The specificity and the details in the words matter, right?
Is there a way of training which words we use, or is it just we need to always be focusing on the words and practicing using the right ones, or are there exercises you could do?
Yeah. So one, you got to identify them, right? You got to develop enough self-awareness to know when I'm playing and competing, this thought enters my mind, right? In this scenario, this thought enters my mind. Or in this scenario, I'm pretty good at controlling and staying proactive with my thoughts, right? So you got to develop that awareness to know when the interfering thought comes in, and then have the self-awareness to change that thought, right? So some of the exercises we use with players, one is identifying the correct language, right? And we'll have them write it out. We use notebooks or journaling, which actually have kind of 2 benefits. One, you have a place where you've written it out, so it's easy to review and see, okay, in this scenario, I think this thought, right? Or these are, we call them power statements or performance statements. So at this point in a race, I'm going to say this thought, right? At this point in the game, I'm going to focus on this task, right? And we have them write it down so they can review it. The second benefit of writing things down is it actually encodes in memory stronger when you're putting pen to paper or typing it out in a notes app on your phone, but writing those down. So that's a skill that we do. Another tool that we use is getting people to reflect. So as they're building these mental skills and then they go out to a game and they compete, we ask them afterwards, like, hey, what went well? What did you do that specifically led to this great performance that you specifically did? And we'll have them write out 3 or 4 things they did well, or it could be 10 things they did well, right? And then one thing they could do a little bit better. But that keeps your brain focused on what's working and what's going well, and focused on building strengths rather than focusing on the weaknesses or the failures, right? And so those are just 2 exercises that we do a lot with the players here, or with all the players that we work with and teams that we work with to help solidify in those mental strengths.
Okay. Probably last question here for the coaches as well. When I was a player, they would give me positive statements to say. Other times, if maybe I wasn't giving enough of my effort, they would walk up and say, "You're not giving enough." Maybe like more of a negative type of statement. But that was very motivating to me, and it helped me reach my potential. And I know some coaches are a little harder. I know I didn't play football, but I'd watch football coaches be a little harder on their players than maybe us when I was in tennis or basketball. But we still had an element of that. Where do we find that balance of this maybe tough motivation, but also making sure they stay positive and make those work?
Yeah. So what I'll say, and I'm actually going to change your word from positive to proactive.
Okay.
And so I would have a couple of thoughts there. One, coaches can be demanding without being demeaning, right? So I think that's a really, really important attribute or characteristic or approach that they take in their coaching, right? So I can be demanding to you and ask you to bring more energy and bring more effort because you're going to play better and the team is then going to play better, right? But I don't have to demean you in the process, right? I don't have to say, Matt, you're a lazy, bad player. Why can't you just bring more energy? I don't need to say that to get the same benefit out of you and just say, Matt, bring more energy. The guys, you need more energy. The guys need more energy. We need to play harder. And again, that's more proactive oriented language, right? I'm giving you the task. I'm giving you the instruction. I'm asking you to do the same thing, right? And both
Right.
phrases are elevate the effort, elevate the energy, right? And so that's the big key is I don't mind coaches being demanding or tough with players and demanding excellence and demanding accountability and demanding or encouraging players to be responsible and take initiative and go and raise their energy levels, right? But I don't have to do that in a negative way, and I don't have to be demeaning to get those same benefits. A really good way to look at this is your energy, your effort, or even your motivation is kind of like fire, right? So we'll use fire as an example. If I'm using proactive words and I'm coaching you in a more approach-oriented way, I'm building a fire that is more like hot coals that you use to cook a steak on, right? If you make the coals correct and you've got the right airflow and you've got them, the wood or the coals spaced out and they get really, really hot, how long do they stay hot for?
quite a while.
For a long time, right? Like
they're there for a while. Yeah.
They stay hot for a long time. Those embers will stay red for a long time, right? And so if I'm thinking about your motivation in terms of that, I want you to be motivated. I want that fire to stay hot for a long time. Now, if I'm just yelling and cursing and demeaning you, I can get you to move. I can get some motivation out of you. I can get you to move, but it's more like pouring lighter fluid on wet coals or wet wood, right? Like I'll get a burst of fire, but then what do I have to do next time to get that fire to go again?
You have to dump the lighter fluid.
More
again.
lighter fluid or more gasoline, right? So that means I have to yell louder or I have to be more intense. And it works. Like I can get you to move, but what kind of motivation am I building in you? Am I building reactive, quick, flashy motivation where I have to elevate the intensity every time to get you to move? Or am I building the right motivation where eventually you get to this point where you move on your own and I don't have to say anything? Like you recognize during the game, oh, I need to raise my energy levels. And you're just making that conscious decision on your own, and then the coach doesn't have to do anything, right? I think most coaches would want that type of motivation from all their players, right? So both work, but it's like pouring lighter fluid on the fire versus building a really, really burning hot form of motivation where the player then goes and pushes and directs themselves.
I think that's something that I also ran cross country in high school. My coach did that very well, where he didn't really need to say much to me because I would just look at him if I was in a race or if we're doing 400, 800 meter sprints for practices, that just kind of look at him and be like, oh, I need to do more. But he didn't say anything, but I was always able to push myself more because I knew he'd built that really well with me and with most of our runners. He was great.
Yeah, that's awesome. So in terms of what can parents do and what can coaches do to help start to build this in their players, one of the things, obviously I work here at BYU, but one of the things we've done is we've actually started a company and we've partnered with the Strong Youth Foundation. We've done a few things together in terms of education and training, but we started a company. It's called Motivate. And our whole goal is to train young developing athletes how to build these mental strengths so that they can go and be mentally tougher. They can be more confident. And that could be more confident in sport. That could be more confident in school. That could be more confident in just how they face adversity and approach life, right? We train the athletes how to develop focus and motivation and decision-making and grit and resilience. It's funny. I get asked all the time by parents like, hey, how do I help my kid be more resilient? And sometimes they don't like my answer, but I'll say to them, like, let them lose, let them fail, and then teach them how to bounce back from that. Teach them what's the process of bouncing back. That's resilience. It's not trying to remove the difficulty or remove the failure. There's a little bit of a myth out there that we want our kids to be comfortable. We want them to not have to face adversity or trials or challenges. But it's facing those adversities and facing those challenges and even losing games that we actually build our mental toughness. We build resilience. We build grit. We build the ability to build motivation, right? And so, parents will ask me, how do I build more grit? I say, well, give them something hard to do and let them demonstrate that skill of pushing through that really hard. Make them go run a half marathon. Make them go run 5 miles, right? And just teach them that, like, hey, you can push through really hard things. And that's where the skill of grit gets built, right? But anyways, parents, so one, we've got it. All of these skills are trainable, developable. That's not even a word. All of these skills can be trained and developed, right? And so that's one of the things that we've set out to do. Is sort of one of my life's mission to help young developing athletes and even just young developing people be mentally stronger, mentally tougher, so that when the adversity hits, because it's gonna hit us. Life is mean. Life is brutal, right? Sport can be mean and brutal, right? Training is hard and tough, right? But when we get presented with these moments, we'll have the skills and the tools and more importantly, the cognitive abilities to then overcome or push through or bounce back, right? So, one of my invitations to everybody watching this podcast or seeing this is look us up, come train with us, right? Let's develop those mental skills and those mental strengths, so we can, worst case scenario, we're all just a little bit more mentally tough, right? Best case scenario, we win more games, we compete better, we set lifetime bests, and we go on to achieve great things.
Awesome. Where can they find this? Is that an app? You got a website, social media?
Yeah. I mean, the easiest way is to find me on social media at Dr. Bobby Lowe is kind of the handle I use, or find us at www.motivate.com, and it's spelled MOTYV8, the number 8.com. And we can put the link in the show notes here.
We'll put it in the notes, yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been great talking to you, learning more about this sports psychology, and wish you the best in whatever you're doing the rest of the day.
Yeah, appreciate it, Matt. It was fun. It was a great conversation. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks.